Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're engaging with some profoundly challenging source material. It's a sweeping message called God's Warning to the World.
And what's really unique here is the context. This isn't some academic paper. It's a whole theological framework, creation, the fall, restoration, all laid out by someone writing from a prison cell.
That context just gives it this incredible urgency. It feels less like theory and more like a foundational truth being delivered under pressure.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really unpack the core concepts here. We're talking about the fundamental relationship between God and humanity.
A very stark, eternal definition of good and evil.
And this historical pattern of sacrifice that, according to the source, has to happen for what it calls a worldwide spiritual revolution.
And like a lot of these deep texts, it starts with a big one, the unsolvable question.
Does God exist?
Right. But the source makes a really strong point right away. It says trying to prove God with human logic is, well, it's self-defeating. I mean, think about it. If you could fit God neatly into the box of human logic, he'd be small enough for us to have created him.
So the very fact that we can't fully grasp or prove God is, in a way, part of the definition of God's greatness.
Precisely. The text suggests that people who just accept the premise that God exists eternally are, starting from a wiser place.
Because that acceptance establishes God as absolute, unchanging.
And if he is unchanging, then his laws, his values, his purpose for creation, all of that must be absolute too.
Okay, so let's get into that purpose. The source flips the script a bit.
God.
Doesn't just ask what's precious to us, but what's most precious to God.
And the answer is three things that we also long for: love, life, and ideal.
Now, you'd think an omnipotent God has everything.
Right. The source says he's the origin of all power, money, knowledge, anything you can think of. But, and this is the key insight, even he can't experience love, life, and ideal by himself.
He needs a relationship.
He needs an object, a counterpart to reflect and respond to him. And that object is us.
Humanity.
Oh.
And this is what the text calls the subject-object principle.
Right, exactly. It's the cornerstone of this whole worldview. It's not just God as the subject and us as the object in some static way.
It's a dynamic.
It's a continuous give and take. That's where love and ideals actually become real, and that flow of energy between the two.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It even explains why we humans seem to be hardwired for the absolute. We want a love that's eternal, unique, unchanging.
Because we're reflecting the nature of our eternal subject, God.
So this relationship, this reciprocity, that's what determines our value.
It is. The source uses this really striking analogy. It says, think of a humble woman who marries a great famous man.
Okay.
The second that genuine reciprocal love is established between them, her value is instantly lifted up to his. Not because of who she was before, but because of the relationship itself.
So we, as the object, can achieve a value equal to God, the subject, through that perfect love relationship.
That's the entire goal. That's what human perfection is for, to reach a divine value, like the value of Jesus.
So what's God's motivation in all this? What does he get out of it?
Joy.
Joy.
That's the one thing he can't create on his own. The text is very clear. God created everything for joy, but his own joy is, well, it's dormant until that give and take with us is perfected.
So an all-powerful being is, in a way, dependent on us for his own happiness.
It's a radical idea, and it leads straight to this concept of the incarnate God. Meaning we are created in his image to be the visible form of the invisible God. Man and woman together in perfection are the physical manifestation of God. We are literally the incarnate God.
Wow. So our perfection would have been like the day God himself was born into the physical world.
Exactly. It reframes everything.
Okay, let's transition then.
Yeah.
If that was the ideal, we need to understand the standard of goodness and, of course, where it all went wrong.
Right. So the source says creation was God's total labor. He poured 100% of his love, his life, his ideal into us, into his second self.
Which tells you something essential about God's nature.
It tells you everything. He exists to give, to love. He doesn't exist for himself.
And that becomes the absolute, eternal definition of goodness.
Total giving, total service, absolute unselfishness. The subject lives for the object, and the object lives for the subject. That's it. That's the law of life.
The source even sees this principle in the physical universe, in what it calls circular motion.
Yeah, think about it. The sun, the moon, the earth, the blood circulating in your body, the way your own eyes move.
That's all circular.
Everything that lasts, that endures, moves in a harmonious circle of give and take. If you break that circuit, you stop. It's as simple as that.
So if goodness is unselfishness and circular motion, then evil has to be the exact opposite.
The breaking of that circuit. Evil is the emergence of radical selfishness, the decision to exist only for yourself.
The moment the focus shifts from we and us to I and me.
That's the moment the connection is severed. And this brings us to the source's really specific account of the human fall.
We're told the ultimate source is Satan, a fallen archangel. But it wasn't just about disobedience like eating a piece of fruit.
No, the source is emphatic about this. The fall was, at its very core, an illicit, unchaste love relationship.
The archangel seduced Eve.
Right. She was meant to be the master's bride, his object. After that, she then tempted Adam into the same act.
And defining it that way as a sin of love is crucial, isn't it?
It's everything. Because it explains how the human lineage itself became contaminated. It wasn't just a mistake, it was the foundation of a whole history ruled by Satan. Every person born after that inherited that broken lineage.
Which sets up the entire problem of restoration. If we were born from a satanic lineage, salvation has to mean a kind of rebirth.
A radical one. The goal becomes restoring that original pure lineage by being grafted onto a new, sinless source.
And that's where the idea of the true parents comes in.
Yes, the ones who can finally establish that sinless family on earth.
So let's talk about Jesus within this framework. The source is clear. He's the only begotten Son of God, the perfected Adam.
But it also draws a huge distinction. It says, he is a man in whom God is incarnate, a mediator. He's not God the Father himself.
So what was his mission then?
To establish that first sinless family. As the perfected Adam, he needed to find and restore his bride, the second Eve.
So they could become the true parents.
And change the lineage of all humankind.
And this is where the source makes a really controversial claim, that his mission was left incomplete on earth.
The crucifixion, it argues, was driven by a lack of faith from the people. And it prevented the physical family from being established.
It's a huge departure from traditional Christian thought.
It is, because if God's ideal is a perfected man and woman together, then Jesus was meant to have a family. The source is very direct. It even calls the teaching of celibacy a crippled teaching because it contradicts that ideal.
It's a lot to take in. But even with that incomplete physical mission, Jesus' teachings are still held up as the absolute standard of goodness.
They're the standard for restoration, for paying back that debt, complete giving, loving your enemy, losing your life for others.
And the source explains this almost like physics. The more you give, the bigger the vacuum you create.
And the more of God's infinite love can rush in to fill it.
This sacrificial path seems to be the one thing all of God's champions have in common. People like Noah, Abraham, Jacob.
Total denial of self. That's the key. I mean, think of Noah. He spent 120 years building a giant boat on a mountain. That's completely insane to everyone around him.
Or Abraham leaving his home, ready to sacrifice his own son.
God often chooses these incomprehensible paths precisely to separate his people from the fallen world's way of thinking.
And that separation usually involves a period of really intense hardship. The source calls it indemnification. What exactly does that mean?
Indemnification is basically paying back a historical debt. You're making up for past failures with present sacrifice, and Jacob's life is the perfect example.
His 21 years with Laban, being cheated over and over.
That was his path of tribulation, but the climax, of course, is the wrestling match.
With the angel at the sword of Jabbok.
Which was really a test against Satan's influence. He fights all night, gets injured, but he refuses to let go until he gets the blessing.
He was willing to sacrifice everything.
Everything. His wealth, his safety, and that victory, winning the name Israel, that represents the kind of absolute determination needed to pay the debt.
Okay, so bringing this into the modern day, this historical view leads to a pretty sharp critique of where we are now, spiritually.
Especially of modern Christianity, which the source says is in crisis.
Yeah.
Two main reasons. First, it's divided into thousands of denominations. It's like Jesus's body being torn apart.
And the second.
More importantly, it's fallen into a trap of self-centered salvation, my heaven.
Which goes completely against the core principle of living for others.
It's the opposite of God's purpose, which is world salvation.
The sources then really zoom in on America. They say God needed America to be a champion nation for this global restoration.
And they draw a direct line back to the Pilgrims, calling them the Abrahams of modern history.
Because of their sacrificial faith.
Right. There's this striking example of them choosing to save grain for planting the next spring, even while they were starving through the winter. They put the future ideal above their own lives. That's why America was chosen.
But the source delivers a pretty severe warning that America is failing that mission now.
It says the country is retreating into selfish individualism, humanism, and pragmatism.
And it points to some very specific symptoms.
It does. It calls the drug problem the leprosy of America. It claims that rampant immorality makes Sodom and Gomorrah look trivial.
And we should be clear, the text here identifies movements like the gay liberation as a tool of the adversary to destroy family values.
Yes. And again, it's crucial for us to convey this is the analysis from the source material itself. We're reporting its claims, not endorsing them.
The source then uses this analogy of the two thieves on the cross to frame the global situation.
It does. The thief on the right, who defended Jesus, represents the God-fearing democratic world with America at its center.
And the thief on the left is the God-denying materialist world, symbolized by communism.
And the warning is stark. It's that America is stepping back from its role as the defender of goodness, leaving the whole world vulnerable.
So the solution then has to be a total reversal, a return to altruism.
On every level. The argument is that your own salvation or your nation's salvation is only guaranteed when you're fighting for world salvation.
It all comes back to that circular relationship of responsibility.
Exactly. The individual exists for the family for society, society for the nation for the world for God.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've got this circuit of selfless living, all directed outwards towards God.
And here's the beautiful completion of that circuit. The source says God exists for you and me.
So God exists for us.
That total altruism is the key. The whole point is that the world needs a spiritual revolution of the heart, from selfishness to unselfishness.
And the core insight seems to be that God isn't just sitting up on some glorious throne. His heart is grieving. It has been since the fall.
Yes. The ultimate truth, according to this, is that we have to stop asking God to liberate us. We have to start working to liberate his grieving heart by taking on his sorrow and living that selfless love.
So these aren't just theories.
No, they're meant to be the ultimate truth that you have to live.
And finally, that shift in focus from your own security to serving the whole is presented as the ultimate guarantee.
The final provocative thought for you to really consider is this. The source assures us that if you fully commit to living for the sake of the whole, you become a center of the universe.
Accepted anywhere.
Anywhere. And God himself will personally make sure you're blessed and put in the highest place in his kingdom, even if you try to refuse it. By giving up the search for your own security, you find the only real security there is.
A stunning claim and a complete restructuring of priorities. That brings us to the end of this deep dive into God's warning to the world.
Thank you.